Hey, I'm Jenny Wireman from Bearded Goat Trail Running, and this is
Adam Moody.
Hey, and today for our weekly webinar, we're going to be talking about self-supporting on race day.
Yep. So, I mean, this can cover the whole range from like 5K to ultras. I think we'll probably focus, we hadn't talked about this, but we'll probably focus a little bit on the longer distance stuff. Just because at a 5-10K distance, we can work our way up, but I would just say, you need a water bottle, maybe. It depends on weather and how you feel and how you're prepared. But I think beyond that, maybe there's some additional things that come into play that you don't really need at some of the shorter distances.
So, of course, the first thing to worry about is how to get to the start line, or maybe how to get back from the finish line. So oftentimes races will have transportation that will shuttle you if it's a point-to-point. From either the start to the finish or the finish to the start, depending on where where there'll be a shuttle one of the ways, which is pretty nice. In fact, the race that we did just last weekend had a shuttle that took us from the finish line where we parked our car to the start, and then we basically just ran back to our car.
Yeah, so this would pretty much be for a point-to-point race. Not obviously a lot of them do loops or out and back, in which case, you park and run and there you go. But something else I think is important about this, no matter if it's an out and back or a loop or a point-to-point, is being prepared for, kind of like the Boy Scout, like be prepared for the worst, right? Hope for the best. You don't have to overkill plan. But I always like to think about things like, what if I'm out and I do a long run, like I do a 20-mile, a marathon, an ultra, and I'm by myself and I get really bad cramps? Because how am I going to drive home? Mm-hmm. So that to me is just something to think through. So it's not that there's an easy solution. It may be that, hey, hope, carry some extra water in your car and maybe some salt tabs and things like that, just to, if you need to pull over and, take care of yourself. So I've had that happen. So.
Yeah. Another thing to think about is carpooling. So if you have friends that are going to be going to the same race, or you can even go on the Facebook page of a lot of different races and there'll be, people talking about carpooling and whatnot. So that's also another way to get around having to drive after you've raced.
Yeah. Sorry. I was thinking about the time. So the first time I did anything over a half marathon distance on trails, went out, obviously too fast, or maybe that's not obvious. To me, it is. I generally tend to do that. And I think a lot of new runners do that. Mm-hmm. Went out too fast for the first lap and then did the second lap, and it was hot and I was tired and I didn't drink enough and I didn't eat enough. And, whatever, made it through. I think it was like 16 or 17 miles. And it took me a while, and I finished, and I was like, okay, I'm good. I walked a half mile to the parking lot, and some friends had been waiting for me, and I had some beers in a cooler. It's like, hey, this is great. I wasn't really feeling it, but I was like, oh, okay, let's have a beer. And I drank like half of it. And, at the time, I didn't really understand what was, going on. I was like, I know I'm dehydrated a little bit, but I was like, okay, pour the rest of the beer out. I'm just not feeling good. I'm going to go home. It's about a 45-minute drive. And barely made it home, and then started like cramping up, and came home and rolled around on the floor and, got some orange juice in me and had a bite to eat. And within an hour, I was okay, and just sipping water. But I was like, wow, that's one of those where if I was hours away from home, like I probably would have just had to like head for a store very quickly, or like laid down in the back of the car and like just drank water or something.
So basically, short story is, if you do plan on driving or doing anything really cognitive after a race, make sure that you've got yourself set. So get some food, some water, make sure that you're okay in that department before you take off and get into a dangerous motor vehicle.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that changes too is we now kind of move up here. So we'll talk like marathon, ultra distance. So like marathons, I've done quasi unsupported. You were at Cat's Tail last year. She was going to run, but she got sick. So she ended up meeting me at like mile 10, and that was great because it was 45 degrees and raining. And so I got some dry clothes, which was awesome. But other than that, it was pretty much unsupported. So that, even at that distance, unsupported in the sense that I didn't have a drop bag or anything. There was aid stations and whatnot. But then once you get beyond that point where you're starting to get drop bags for races, I think that's really important. And where when you're by yourself, a lot of planning kind of pays off. Not a lot, but, having that list of, okay, here's what I need. And then probably for myself, I feel better if I overpack a little bit into the drop bag, because it's like, there's no one else there. If it's not in your bag and it's not in the aid station, you might be out of luck. So
yeah, so I mean, there's obvious things to put in drop bags. One of them is fuel. So if you need to have extra salt tabs, or if you need to have electrolytes, other electrolytes, food or gels or anything like that, obviously those go in.
Yeah.
Another somewhat obvious one is dry socks. So if you like to have dry socks, if they get sweaty or wet, it's nice to kind of change into a new one, or a new pair. It kind of is like a pet in the middle of the race.
a foot pet.
Anyway, a new shirt, maybe, if you sweat a lot and you want to change a shirt, that's also rejuvenating to get a nice dry shirt again. Sunscreen is a good one. Bug spray, medical tape. There's so many things that you can put in there that are going to make, kind of your own little pit stop,
I carry a few of the more like emergency type things because, I don't know. I see other people's drop bags and it will vary so wildly. It's crazy. Like how much fuel, especially like how much food and stuff people take. But then the things I'm starting to realize too, that I don't need all the time, but when you don't have them, it puts you in the hurt locker. Like having some sort of like lube, like Body Glide.
Oh yeah. Deodorant.
Whatever it is you use. Cause a lot of times I don't need it, but man, when you start chafing or something, or some gear or something's rubbing you the wrong way, that's not a lot of fun to, just do another 20 miles on top of that or something. So that's a big one. And then I've been thinking about duct tape.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Duct tape might be something we put in our drop bags in the future. Haven't done it yet. Like
a small roll. I'm curious. But anyways, that's pretty good though. I think aid stations usually have duct tape.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. There's no communal lube.
But you should use your drop bags as kind of an accessory to an aid station. Usually drop bags will be at aid stations. If there aren't aid stations, then of course your drop bag will be your aid station. So just kind of filling in the gaps. If you don't know what's at an aid station, then better safe than sorry. Pack it in a drop bag.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, and a good note to have is races will typically have some way to label your drop bag, but if you have a bag tag, it might not be a bad idea to stick a bag tag on your drop bag.
Yeah. I was going to say it's kind of like luggage at the airport. If you've got a really generic, like little bag, you might want to do that depending on how big the race is. Right. So cool. I think like drop bags and transportation are the big things for self-supporting. Yeah. And so we might do a quick follow-up on this. We've each done, marathons and some kind of ultras without a lot of help, but probably not so much on the really long distance without one of us being there for the other. That sounds, I'm going to follow this up with a way that sounds horrible, but I'll be doing my first 100K in a couple weeks, and Jenny's tied up doing some other stuff. So I'll be down to my drop bags and stuff I have at the finish line, but I think it'll be fine. And it should be kind of an interesting experience because we get so used to having each other around or having, friends who come out that this one's just like, well, going to go out and run and guess I better have everything ready. You
better be safe. Yeah. But maybe we'll do a webinar sometime in the future about convincing friends to help you.
Yeah.
Maybe crews. How do you convince people to be your crew?
How to win friends and influence people into being your crew. So, awesome. Yeah. Well, hopefully, you guys picked up something from this. If not, please leave us a comment. Let us know what you do I know a lot of people race by themselves. And a lot don't. So just let us know what you do. We're honestly curious, and by all means, we still learn from people at every race we go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any questions, leave it either in comments or you're welcome to email us.
Cool. Awesome. See everybody next week.
Bye.